Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hold On Till Dawn podcast. I'm your host, Erin, and today I'm very excited about my guest. We met at the Survivors of Suicide Loss Day that I attended back in November. This is Chelsea. She has spent the last 10 years coordinating the Chester County ACEs Coalition. Hi!
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
For listeners meeting you for the first time, how do you explain what the ACEs Coalition is and why it matters?
The ACEs Coalition is a community-led trauma initiative here in Chester County, Pennsylvania. So we're a suburb of Philadelphia, right outside of Philly. But what we do really, our mission is to increase our county's awareness and education around the impact of trauma, not only on our physical or on our mental health, but also our physical health as well. And we also promote hope and resiliency to offset the cycle of trauma. And we believe that really brings strength to communities. And so we do that in a variety of different ways. We offer a lot of trainings, film screenings, workshops, educational opportunities. We host community gatherings to get people together to just connect. And we partner and collaborate with a lot of other organizations in our community that are doing very similar work. We really believe that we can't do all this work in silos, that we have to really work together to achieve, a larger kind of common goal. And that's really to help with folks here in Chester County, our residents who may be struggling with what they've been through, what they've experienced in the past, or what they've been exposed to, and definitely in terms of trauma. Um, so we do a lot here in the county. We're actually on our 10th year, which
Wow.
is pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
very.
we started in June of 2016, where my supervisor and I actually, at the time, I was working at a really small nonprofit, and we attended a trauma training. And our minds were blown when we heard about the ACEs study, or the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And we brought that information back to Chester County, and we were like, who's doing anything about this here in the
Yeah.
county? Is there any sort of trauma initiative? Are we focused on the impact of trauma, and what are we doing about it in the county? And we looked around and nobody was doing anything. So we said, all
Wow.
right, let's do it. So
Yeah.
thankfully, I worked for a really great organization, and they said, sure, let's make this a priority. And we started it about 10 years ago, and we've grown a lot. We've made a lot of different changes, just, given the needs of our communities here in the county. Um, but we have a lot of work to go. We have a lot of ways to go. So we'll see what happens in the next 10.
So you're the one that started this whole organization.
So I helped start it. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, we it was it was a very small nonprofit organization. There was a few of us that really spearheaded this.
Okay.
I originally wasn't the coordinator of it at first, but within a year, I assumed the coordinator role, and I've been doing that work ever since. In January of 2020, that small nonprofit, they recognized that the ACEs Coalition was really growing, and it was a lot of work. And they just said at that time, they're like, this really is not the most appropriate home for this large community-led initiative. And so at that time, Jean Franklin, who is the director of our health department here in Chester County, she was working very closely with us on our leadership committee, and she said, "Hey, I want this." And so she was able to find some funding um, to take me along with it. So I switched over to being contracted with the county,
Okay.
thanks to some grant funding by our Children, Youth, and Families department here in the county. And we are now a program underneath our health department that is financially supported by Children, Youth, and Families.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and the ACEs study, I said ACEs a few times already in our conversation, Erin. So I feel like maybe I should talk a little bit about what that is, because I'm sure you have some listeners who are like, what
Yeah,
is
I
that?
had to look it up too when I first reached out to you.
Yeah, so ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. It was a study, the first kind of public landmark research study that was done on how our childhood traumas or adversities can impact our lifelong health. So this study was done about 30 years ago at this point. And what the researchers did was, again, they asked questions to people who were coming to their annual exams, coming to the doctor for their checkups. They asked them a series of 10 questions. So, and these 10 questions had to do with their childhood and what they experienced in their childhood. And for those questions were yes and no questions. So, the respondent would say, yes, I experienced that, or no, I didn't. And those questions included things like, were you ever physically, emotionally, or sexually abused? Were you ever physically or emotionally neglected? And then questions about like what was going on in their household. So, did you have a parent or a guardian who was incarcerated or had experienced a mental illness or had experienced a substance use disorder? Did you have a parent or a guardian who was incarcerated? And then also, did you witness your mother being treated violently in your childhood? And so, for every yes answer that someone would respond to, you basically got 1 point. And then you summed up your points at the end. So, a person can have an ACE score between 0 and 10.
Okay.
Then the researchers looked at what was going on in their health and their health history over the course of many years, going into adulthood. And so they took all of this information, and what they found were there was three major key findings. One was that ACEs are really common. So like a lot of people experience ACEs. 64% of people in that original study had experienced at least one ACE. And
Wow.
this study was done on over 17,000 people. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, it was a really large sample. An interesting fact about this too was that the majority of the people in this original sample were white, college educated, middle class people, right? So I think there's a lot of maybe judgments about particular communities. And we think that maybe other communities are experiencing trauma at higher rates, which tends to be the truth. But we also know that people who are maybe not in some of those communities, again, these white, college educated, middle class folks, are also experiencing trauma as well.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I think is really important for us in Chester County. We're the wealthiest county in Pennsylvania. And so we often try to use that to tell people like trauma is happening everywhere. It's
Yeah.
not just in those communities that you think, right?
Right.
Um, Another key finding was that there's this like dose response relationship. So as the number of ACEs increases, so does the likelihood that you may develop some very serious health and social problems later on in life. So we see that, looking at ACEs, an ACE score of 4 is actually what we think of as being a pretty high ACE score. So people with an ACE score of 4 or more are 2 times more likely to develop cancer in their lives
Wow.
than a person with an ACE score of 0.
Wow. That's
They are,
crazy.
well, I know, right? You would think that like people 30 years ago, when we heard this information, it would be everywhere.
Yeah.
We don't hear about it too much, which is kind
No.
of sad, right?
Right.
A person with an ACE score of 4 or more is 4 times more likely to suffer from depression. They are 7 times more likely to abuse alcohol. They are 12 times more likely to attempt suicide, which is something really important that we talk about a lot. And they're 32 times more likely to have learning and behavioral problems in school. So it's one of the reasons why we see a lot of behavioral issues in school with kids who have experienced significant trauma.
Yeah.
So there's all this like really good research and information and data that we collected from this ACE study. The last key finding was that a person with an ACE score of 6 or more, their life expectancy decreased by 20 years.
Wow.
So they died 20 years earlier than those of us who didn't experience any ACEs in our childhood. And so that just really goes to show how much impact stress and trauma, especially that we experience in our childhoods, can really impact our physical health for our lives, right? And it can really impact how long we even live, which is
Yeah,
really kind of scary.
it
So
is.
we heard this information and we were like, we got to do something about it. We brought it along over here to Chester County, and we have been doing this work and really trying to just educate everyone in our county about this information because we think everyone should know about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
It is. Like I just learned so much just right now about that. That the whole cancer thing is crazy because you wouldn't think that like trauma, but I guess any kind of trauma really affects your whole entire body. But it's crazy to think that emotional trauma can affect you to the form of a disease, a physical
Right.
disease.
Right. And really how that kind of manifests is it's the stress behind it. Like we all experience stress and stress can actually be good for us. We need a certain amount of stress, certain level of stress in our lives to like perform well.
Mhm.
But when there is constant stress in especially a child's life, they're being exposed to that over and over and over again. When we as children are constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, and we feel like we are doing nothing but surviving, and then we pairing that with not having support in our lives, the people who we feel like we can trust, that we feel protected by, that we feel love us. Like if we don't have those people in our lives too, and we're experiencing this toxic level of stress, that's really what does the damage to our brains and our bodies. It's when we are just in that constant state of survival. And unfortunately, a lot of kids are experiencing that, whether or not it's, they don't know if they have a parent coming home who may be violent towards them or abusive towards them, or, their parent or guardian may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or maybe experiencing a mental health crisis. I mean, the list can go on, but when our kids are experiencing that toxic stress, it does so much damage to our brains and our bodies. And that's, one of the reasons why we really need to be talking about the damage that stress can do
Yeah.
on us and our lives.
Yes. Hmm. On that note, can you talk a little bit about how childhood trauma can show up later in life if it goes unaddressed?
Sure. So that fight, flight, or freeze response, so many of us, we experience this, right? Like I'll just use an example of like saying we are in a forest and there is a bear that is coming at us, right? Our brains acknowledge that, like, okay, there's a bear. It's coming at us. Like, we're freaking out. Like, our bodies automatically jump into that fight, flight, or freeze. And that's a really great response because we need that in order to survive and to protect ourselves.
Mm,
So we kind of kick into that fight, flight, or freeze. All of these hormones in our bodies are being pumped throughout our bodies, right? Like trying to prepare all of the different systems in our bodies to either fight this bear, run away, or freeze, like whatever we need to do to protect ourselves. And so, with these systems in our bodies that are just pumping over and over and over again, that can do a lot of damage. So, if we think about one of the things that may really be elevated when we're in that fight, flight, or freeze or that survival response is our blood pressure. Our blood is being pumped all over our bodies so that we can prepare ourselves to fight or freeze or whatever.
mhm.
Um, well, we know that like high blood pressure is not great, right? Like over time, when we constantly have that high blood pressure, that elevated blood pressure, it's not good for our heart, right? Like that can lead to either strokes or heart attacks later on in life if that blood pressure is continually elevated.
Yeah.
So that's just one way that trauma and stress, especially in childhood, can kind of turn into some of these like physical manifestations later on in life, because that's just one system. If you think about all of the other systems in our body that are working overtime when we're in that survival mode, that's a lot of stuff that's constantly happening in our bodies without the ability to kind of come back down to calm and to baseline and to what is really our normal. And so, that's kind of what we're seeing is that when we are constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, when we feel like we are in survival mode all day long. Um, One of my colleagues, she likes to use like if you think about stepping out into like oncoming traffic and that feeling that you get as soon as you step out, you notice the car or a bus coming at you or whatever, you step back. That feeling is what kids may feel all the time,
Wow.
constantly when they're experiencing trauma and stress. And so if you think about that, imagine that kid going to school and feeling like there's a bus or a truck that's coming at him all of the time, all day long, when a teacher raises his voice or when a teacher tells him to do something or to get his head off of a table or whatever the case may be. So we have to think about what is really happening to kids, and to just people in general, right? Like it's not just about those outward behaviors that we're seeing that sometimes we view as being pretty negative. There's like a lot going on in people's lives behind the scenes that we just may not know. We may not know about. And so I think we always need to really question, we have to rephrase like what's wrong with that person
Hmm.
to what has happened to them.
Yes.
Why are they responding this way? Like what has happened in their lives that this is how they're responding?
Hmm. And I've actually been seeing a lot more online recently about people posting like if someone is like being acting a certain way that seems like angry or upset, like you don't know what they're going through. Like don't just automatically assume that they're like a mean person or something. And I feel like that is something that we didn't have that kind of awareness like years ago. Like people didn't automatically assume like, oh, maybe their mental health is struggling. Maybe they're like struggling with something internally. And so I know we have a long way to go in life with mental health awareness, but I feel like we're going in the right direction. So that's something that is always like inspiring to me and makes me happy to see, like, especially on social media, because that's where I feel like most
Right.
people spend a lot of their time. So,
Yep.
yeah, every time I see that, I'm like, oh, that's nice. Thank you for being
Yeah.
aware of people's mental health.
And that's really what we're just trying to teach people through a lot of our trainings, our presentations. We're trying to really just remind people because sometimes we just simply need a reminder that
Mhm.
like people are really struggling and there's so much more that's going on underneath the surface that than we even are aware of. Like we have a visual of an iceberg, right? And so on the tip of this iceberg, this is all we're seeing. But underneath that surface, there could be so many things that are happening with that person. So how can we be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more understanding? And rather than just jumping to, again, what is wrong with this person, which is so easy to do.
Yep.
Okay. Like I recognize that. I still do it all the time. Again, this is why there's reminders, is that like we have to really think back and say, like, no, it's not about what's wrong with them. It's like what has happened to them. Because I don't think anybody wants to behave this way, or I don't think anybody wants to like come off or come across this way
Hmm.
sometimes. And so there's got to be more to this story. So it's just, I think through a lot of our trainings, that's really what we're trying to teach people is just how to be a little bit more aware of what could have happened to that person, how we can be a little bit more compassionate and just understanding that like they're going, everybody's going through a lot.
Yep.
Everybody is.
Hmm. And what does being a trauma-informed community actually look like day to day?
Yeah, so that's what we try to do with the ACEs Coalition is we're really trying to bring our community together to be trauma informed. And so uh, for me, what that looks like is having like this shared understanding, a shared knowledge from all of our community members here in our county, all of our residents, the people who live and work here, to have them recognize and understand the impact of trauma, what that looks like on people's behavior within their relationships, their physical health, their mental health. What does that look like for people? How does trauma impact them? And then to take it even further from that, though, we really are encouraging safe, supportive environments here in the county. So we do a lot of training with professionals in different workplaces. We go to board members and volunteers to really try to train them on what trauma looks like and what it means. We have trained a lot of healthcare providers because they see a lot of people who are coming into their offices who may really be triggered because of whatever they're experiencing. So we want to make sure that all of these places that people live, work, play in are really safe and supportive and really try not to re-traumatize or trigger that person as best we can. We also really want to make sure that our families and individuals and community members here in the county feel connected and not isolated and not lonely, which is a huge task. COVID really kind of messed that up for us, right?
Yeah.
Like we were so used to working and living in kind of like our bubbles and in that social isolation. And so we try to provide different opportunities for neighbors to connect with one another. And so, we do that by providing gatherings where people just come together, share a meal, and just connect with people who are in their community that just to make sure that maybe they don't feel so isolated or to feel less lonely than they are. And then I think lastly, we really want to make sure that we are recognizing and telling people that healing is possible, recovery is possible, and we can also prevent some ACEs and traumas from happening and really build protective factors. So making sure that our families are financially stable, that they have like safe and affordable housing to live in, that they have access to treatment and services that are going to help them with healing, recovery, and that we provide those opportunities for social connection too. So that to me is like what a trauma-informed community looks like. Chester County is huge. I
Yeah.
think it takes like a full hour, even more, to get from one side of our county to the other. I mean, it's
Wow.
huge, and our communities are very different. Um, so we have, like I said, I mean, Erin, we have so much work to do. It's definitely not over. Our community doesn't look like that at all right now, but slowly but surely, I feel like we're getting there. And especially just by providing this education piece first and foremost and raising awareness, I think is exactly what we're trying to do as the ACEs Coalition right now, just getting out that awareness, making sure that everybody in our county is aware of the impact that trauma can have on others
Yeah.
and
And
themselves.
that is a great first step too, spreading awareness. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like why I started my podcast in the first place to spread awareness and be able to connect with other people and also learn so much about different organizations and have my listeners learn too. So,
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on to just talk a little bit about what we do because it's important. We have to continue to educate folks and not only in the trauma space that I'm in, but a lot of like suicide prevention work I know that you do and I do, and just in the whole world of the whole field of mental health just in
mhm.
general, and I think we're doing, like you said, a better job at that now. You see more and more out there, but it doesn't mean that it's over. We got to keep going.
Yep. And speaking of suicide prevention, you are involved in a suicide prevention and facilitating a loss survivor support group. What have you learned from those spaces?
Oh, I've learned a lot. Um, I've been working with the Chester County Suicide Prevention Partnership for about 10 years, the amount of time that I've worked as the coordinator of our coalition. And it has varied with that time. I started as a QPR instructor, a question, persuade, refer instructor, where I taught people, the signs of and kind of like those warning signs, the red flags of someone who's maybe thinking about suicide and how we can prevent suicides from happening. And I was doing a lot of that work, very connected with the partnership, helping them along. And then 6 years ago, I lost my dad to suicide, and that uh that was just a huge blow. It was such a devastating loss, and I think it kind of reframed and shifted how I worked with our suicide prevention partnership because I felt an immense amount of guilt and almost shame for not being able to save my dad. And that was something that I think I really struggled with for a long time. So I took a step back after I lost my dad and kind of tried to reevaluate how I was going to continue to work with the suicide prevention partnership because it hit home, like
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
close to home as
Hmm.
possible. And so I reevaluated that, and one opportunity, they came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping us with facilitating a suicide loss survivor support group?" And I jumped on that opportunity because I knew that if I had a support group like that after my dad died, if there was one available here in the county for me, it would have really helped me. It would have really helped with connecting to other people who had experienced a similar loss rather than feeling like I was alone. And
Yeah.
so I I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being able to help other people in a different way. I think suicide prevention work is so important. It is critical to help with saving lives. But I oftentimes think that us survivors of loss get a little bit like pushed to the side almost or forgotten. And I didn't want that to continue to happen. I feel like we need the support. We need to be able to talk about our losses and not feel the shame and the guilt around that loss and to be able to connect with other people who experience a lot because it's so different. It's so different than other
Yeah.
losses,
Hmm.
and unless you have felt it, you don't you don't know. You don't really know exactly how it feels, I guess. I don't know how to put that into better words, but
No,
unless
but
you are a
I
survivor
agree. Yeah.
yourself, you just don't get it. You don't
Right.
understand it.
Hmm.
And so being able to provide this monthly support group is huge for me. And it's taught me a lot about my own grief and my own like journey with that. Um, but I've been so, I think, grateful for the experience and being able to provide that support to other people in the county, I think is really, really helpful.
And I don't think I realized it that you had started your work with mental health and suicide prevention before you lost your dad. So, what was it that drew you to that cause?
Yeah. Um, I think I just I've always been a helper. So like when I was in second grade, my teacher was like asking my mom, "What do you think Chelsea's going to be when she grows up?" And my mom said, "I don't really know. I just know she's going to help people." Like that's all I ever wanted to do. And I was always interested in psychology and in mental health. And so I went to school for that. And I got out of school and I thought, well, I'm going to be a therapist. And so I went to grad school, and halfway through, I experienced my own trauma. I lost my aunt to domestic violence. Her husband had
Oh,
killed her.
wow.
And I was beside myself, and I didn't know how to grieve and how to cope. And at that time, I just thought, you know what? This is not for me being a therapist. I don't think this is really what I want to do anyway. So I dropped out. And I tried to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And I got more into like social work, connecting kids with mental health services, and then helping women who were experiencing housing insecurity and seeing everybody who I was working with go through such significant trauma. Really, I think when I heard about the ACEs study and I went through the trauma trainings, it kind of sucked me in. I just felt like this is it. This is what I have to do. This is where I kind of belong. And thankfully, the organization that I was working for at the time, they believed in me, and they allowed me to kind of spearhead this initiative and see where it would take me. And so it kind of fell in my lap, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah,
How can we better support people grieving a suicide beyond the initial days or weeks?
that's such a good question. Because I think it's so not easy, but initially, like after someone experiences a loss, especially to suicide, there are people that are kind of coming out of the woodwork, right? That are sending flowers and cards. I mean, the amount of cards and support that I received days after my dad's passing was incredible. And it was very nice, but it was overwhelming. And uh, and then weeks after, they go away. People not tend to forget, but I think they just, they get back to life.
Yeah.
And your life is never going to be the same. And so it's so hard as a survivor months and weeks after your loss that the world just keeps turning and you just don't feel like yours is anymore, or it isn't turning the same way. Like it
Right.
just doesn't feel right. And so I think one thing that I experienced a lot was people not wanting to say my dad's name or not wanting to mention him, not wanting to bring him up. And that made me feel like he was forgotten or ignored or was irrelevant,
Hmm.
and he's not. So I always encourage people to talk about my dad, like tell me stories about him or just mention him or bring him up or let me tell you something fun about my dad. Like, or if I bring it up, don't make it awkward. Like
Yeah.
I want to talk about him, And so that's one thing that I really encourage people, you know, people who have lost somebody to suicide, they didn't forget about what happened. You're not going to remind them of something that they've forgotten about because they
Right.
haven't. So bring up their people. Like we want to talk about them. At least I know I did.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I think really helped me is that like when some folks wanted to just bring them up. Um, Other things I think are just really supportive is just being there, not wanting to fix the problem. Nobody's going to fix this. Nobody's going to like help me through it really. It's just it sucks. And I think like having somebody having a friend who just reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. I know this really sucks." That honestly felt better than somebody who was like, "I'm so sorry. I want to do something for you." No, just acknowledge how much this sucks right now. So I think that helped me too. But I think just being there, just listening to somebody who's grieving is important. Um, and if they want to talk about it, cool. If they don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But just be there and follow up if you can, you know.
What gives you hope in this work, even when the topics feel heavy?
Yeah, I think what gives me hope while doing this work, especially when the topics feel heavy, and that's hard because like when you talk about trauma and suicide all day long, it can be
Yeah.
yeah, a whole lot, right? And so what gives me hope is recognizing that there is hope in some of this. So for every one of our presentations, our trainings, anything that we do when we're talking about trauma and suicide, we leave on somewhat of a hopeful note, recognizing that recovery and healing and resilience is possible. Those things that we are not just we are not just the traumas that we've experienced. We're not just the losses that we've experienced. It's more than that, right? And we can heal and recover. And so that in itself, I think is really hopeful for me. But also when I walk away from some of these trainings and I have people who come up to me afterwards and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for providing that information because now it all makes sense." I've provided ACEs screenings to single moms who are really struggling. And after they take the questionnaire and they answer all the questions, and I tell them about the ACEs study and I tell them about, how that trauma may have impacted them. I've seen so many faces and so many times they've looked at me and been like, "Thank you. Like, thank you for acknowledging that there's nothing wrong with me, that, and I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this, that it's just what I've been through and what I've been exposed to, that maybe, this is why this is all happening to me or whatever the case may be. Just seeing people really kind of connect the dots and recognize that they're not alone and yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. That it's just kind of what they've been through. That I think the most hopeful piece is when people really get it. And then also like when we do trainings for professionals and they're able to take some strategies away from our presentations and say, "Oh, I'm going to implement this into my work, with my clients, with my patients, with the people that I'm serving. I never really thought about it this way, and now I'm going to do things a little bit differently." That also is really just inspiring. And I think that kind of keeps me doing what I'm doing, even though this stuff can be really,
Hmm.
really hard.
What does resilience mean to you personally and professionally?
That is a loaded question. I looked at this question, I was like, "Oh my gosh." Um, so resilience professionally, we always talk about resilience as being the ability to bounce back, right? From any kind of setback, any challenge, any trauma, any adversity that you may experience. It's how you're bouncing back or even bouncing forward. Uh, and so I tell that to people, and I also make sure that folks understand that it's not, resilience doesn't mean that we forget about what has happened, right? Like it doesn't mean that we are getting over something. It just looks like we're acknowledging what has happened. We recognize it was really tough. And after a while, we have the ability to continue to live our lives despite what we've been through. And so often, I think people can get really stuck in their traumas and stuck in their grief and their loss and their stress, and it's hard to look to the future. And so we try to tell people that it's not just about ignoring what happened to you or forgetting about it, that we use it almost like as a catalyst to move forward and to say, I'm gonna make something of myself. I'm gonna continue to move on because challenges are always gonna happen. Things are gonna always gonna happen. Unfortunately, this is what life is, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't go unscathed. Stuff is gonna be really tough, but we have to figure out ways to keep moving. And so I feel like I've taken that, I've used that my whole life. It's like things happen, traumas happen, and they've happened to me, and you can't always control them, which can be hard to accept for me. It's
Yeah.
hard to accept. But we have to figure out how to move forward, how to keep moving. And it can be really tough, but I think that, I know it's possible. I've seen it, I've done it, maybe not successfully or gracefully all the time. Um, but we have to. We have to. So I think it's just how well do we do that? How well can we get back up, keep moving forward, and also, I personally, with my own resilience and the ways in which I continue to move forward, is also honoring what has happened to me and the people that maybe it's happened to. I mentioned I lost my aunt to domestic violence. I really try hard to remember her and to speak for her because she can't speak for herself anymore in terms of domestic violence awareness. Same thing for my dad. I want to make sure that I'm talking about him, and I want to do things to help other people who are either thinking about suicide or who have lost someone to suicide. What can I do to continue to move forward, but still honoring those people that I've
Hmm.
lost, I think is really important.
And now that you say that, actually, so when we had our suicides of survivor loss meeting, and you had talked about like traditions and things that you did on the anniversary, and I didn't really have one with my sister and mom, but that kind of like made me want one. So for Christmas, I got us all matching candles that like have his picture on it, and we like lit it together on FaceTime because we all live in different states. My sister lives in Massachusetts, I'm in New Jersey, and my mom's in Virginia. So we like FaceTimed and lit our candles, and it was really nice. And actually my candle went a little nuts, and I was like, oh, is that my dad? Because it literally was like going crazy as if like wind was blowing on it, but there was
Yeah.
no central air, nothing. So that was that was
Oh,
pretty cool. Yeah.
that's really, I love that you mentioned that, Erin. And I think it's important, like I said, just like keeping them alive in our own special ways. Like, what do we do for them? And it can be things like, a little candle that you have that you just light in remembrance of them, or it can be, I mentioned to you when we met, my sister and I one time went to like a spa, and we got like our head, it did like a head spa, which it's just taking care of ourselves, but we did
Right.
that because we knew it was going to be a hard day, right? So,
Yes.
so like, what do we do to either help honor them or to take care of ourselves or whatever we feel like we need to do on those days that can be really, really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for like talking about it and inspiring me to do it, because I never thought about it until we were talking about it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the three of us don't actually do anything on that day. So I like that we created that tradition now.
That's so cool. It'll be something that you guys can, like you said, continue to do every year to help honor him.
Yeah. My mom was like, how long do we leave this lit for? I was like, maybe an hour, because we want it to last for a couple of years.
Maybe it's too long. Don't like let it burn all night.
Yeah. Oh, that was funny. If you are going through a difficult time, what is something you do to help yourself get through it?
So I am a firm believer. I have to practice what I preach. And so, one of the reasons I say that is because for years I was doing these trainings and I was telling people, especially professionals who, are the helpers, who are working with people who have been exposed to a lot of trauma, right? And so they're getting some of that vicarious trauma and secondhand trauma. And uh, so I would always tell them, like, you got to take care of yourself. You have to figure out ways to, have self-care or whatever that looks like. And I was doing nothing. And so after my dad's death, and I was like, I gotta figure this out for me because I wasn't doing it. I wasn't practicing it. And I think that that's pretty common with a lot of helping professionals.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I'll go to trainings and I'll say, what do you do to take care of yourselves? And nobody raises their hand. So I think it's so important that we take time to intentionally do things that make us feel good and to help us, especially when we're overwhelmed, we're not feeling so great. So, what I've really implemented is a pretty good workout schedule. I go to a gym that has a really great community, a
Oh.
really great supportive community. I've made a lot of friends there. I work from home primarily, so I needed a way to get out of the house and just to interact with other adults.
Yeah.
And that was one way that I did it. So I joined this gym. Again, I have some friends there. We have a great community, very supportive. That's one thing that's really helped improve my mental health and my physical health, which is just a bonus. But one reason why I think I love it, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate working out, and I hate working out. It's not fun. I don't think it's fun. But it's 45 minutes of my day that is dedicated to me. And as I'm working out, I don't think about all of the other stuff going on in my
Yeah.
life. All I'm thinking about is maybe like how much I hate this workout, how I don't want to do another burpee, like how I don't, I'm cursing at my trainer as she's telling me to do more. Like, so that time is just simply devoted to me. So I think I encourage other people all the time to like do something that you can do simply for yourself and you don't have to worry about anybody else, right? So that's one thing that I think has really helped me. I began reading like 2 years ago now. I've never read a book in my life before, but now all of a
What?
sudden I know. Now I'm reading. I'm a reader. So I do that a lot and that just kind of like helps me escape like what's going on. And then I think like social connection is really important. So that's one of the number one factors in building your own resilience is making sure that you have positive, supportive people in your life. And so my sister is my best friend. I talk to her all of the time, having a great relationship with my husband and my son, spending quality time with them is something that's really important to me. And other friends, really carving out time to do that is so, so important. So those are just a few things that I do to take care of myself. I listen to a lot of music, scream, sing in the car, those things.
What do you like to scream sing to?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. There's right now I get into like these weird um I don't know. It depends on my mood. So if I'm happy,
Yeah.
if I'm great, I'm listening now to like I might be a Swiftie, I might be one. I'm trying hard not to be. I don't want to be. But like
Uh,
the new album is just really good.
yeah.
So when I'm happy, I like turn on some Taylor Swift. Crazy.
Okay.
When I just feel kind of like emotional or raw, I listen to a lot of like 2000s emo music sometimes, like Brand
Okay.
New or Taking Back Sunday. Um, just casually, I usually have country music on in the car. I
That is
don't
a
know.
variety.
It
No.
is a variety. I
Yeah.
have a playlist that's called the most random playlist, and it'll go from like, AC/DC or Guns N' Roses to like Cardi B and Meek Mills, Taylor Swift or Carrie Underwood. I don't even know. I just listen to the most random things.
Yeah.
But
You're
I
not
don't know.
my first podcast guest to say that too. There's a couple people I honestly forget who they were. Whoops, sorry. But I think it may have been my friend Andy. I remember him saying they listened from like classical music to like hardcore rock and roll,
Yeah.
like and everything in between. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
depends on your
definitely me.
mood.
I have a wide variety of music that I listen to. But I think it just depends on my mood, what I'm going through.
Yeah, for sure. And pedaling back to books, what genre do you like to read?
I'm really into like psychological thriller
Oh, wow.
books. I
I wasn't
know.
expecting that. Okay.
Yeah, like serial killers and
Oh,
crime and
wow.
I don't know.
Oh, that's
You
cool.
again, it just kind of like I just it I think about what's going on in the book. I think it like gives me a good
Yeah, it
escape.
distracts you. Yeah.
Yeah, distraction and it's been good to keep me off my phone. That was one of the reasons why I picked up reading was because I was like, I gotta get off my phone.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love to write, so I've actually published 5 novels.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing. What do you write?
Young adult fiction. But the last book I wrote, which came out in 2020, I've been working on my sixth book for like 6 years now. But the last one I wrote that came out in 2020 is about a girl whose boyfriend goes missing. So it's not a psychological, maybe it's a little psychological. It's not really a thriller, but it's like a mystery. So if you
That's
want to
so
check it out.
cool. Yeah, I'll have to. You'll have to give me the title and everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good for you. Gosh, you're
Thank
like a
you.
jack of all trades.
I know I do a lot of creative things. I really got it from my dad. He was very creative. He was a an artist, like a professional artist actually. My mom's she's like very smart and she's like a nurse and went to like BU and so I don't have any of that kind of smarts. I just got everything
Oh,
from my dad, which is totally fine. Like it's okay.
I'm sure you got a little from her. I'm sure. But I think with regard to music, though, with us talking about music, Erin, it just music brings me back to my dad because that's something that I think I got from him too, was um he played music. So he played the guitar, he sang, but he also pr wrote and produced like his own
Oh,
music as
wow.
well. So when I was young, he was writing his own songs, and we would go to the recording studio, which was simply
Oh,
just like a
that's so
room at his
cool.
friend's house, and they had all the recording equipment and he would record his own songs, and I was like his number one fan,
Oh,
and it was fun. It was fun to kind of hear that and experience it, and I think like he taught me at a very young and early age that like music speaks louder than words sometimes. And
yep.
so I think that's kind of relates to why I kind of gravitate to all these different genres of music or varieties of music, because they all speak differently to me depending on my mood or how I'm feeling, or they bring up different memories or emotions for me. And so it's funny, my son the other day was just like, "Oh, like what's your favorite song, Mom?" And I was like, I couldn't tell you. I literally couldn't tell you my favorite song, my favorite artist. Like it's not about that for me. It's more of like,
Yeah.
what does that music kind of bring up or like evoke in you at that time? You know, does it bring you back to a certain memory, or, you know, something that has happened, or how you felt at one point of time,
Hmm.
or how you're feeling now? Like what does it bring up for you? And so I think it's one of the reasons that music is just so beautiful for so many people, is because it just means something different for everyone. But it can speak to us in ways that other things can't.
Yep. And that's why the benefit concerts were so important to me
Yeah.
because spending a night with other people with like a common interest and
Yeah.
like listening to music and getting lost in it and not having to talk about anything but feeling all your emotions.
Yeah. It just helps us. It helps. And I got the scream singing from my dad too. So like we would be in the car and he would turn the music full blast, and he would be doing like, you know, drumming on the steering wheel and screaming at the top of it, or singing at the top of his lungs. And he always encouraged us to do that while we were in the car. And so I'm trying to like kind of pass that down to my son, even though he's looking
Aw.
at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, just feel it, just feel it.
Speaking of difficult times, Valentine's Day is coming up and can highlight loss or loneliness. How can people show themselves compassion on days that feel especially difficult?
That's a hard one too. I think oftentimes on certain days we all kind of feel this way, right? Like for me, oftentimes it's like my dad's death day or Father's Day for me is
Hmm.
really tough, right? And
Yeah.
so we can really kind of get stuck in feeling that way. I think for me personally, what helps me getting through some of those challenging days, and for some people, Valentine's Day is going to be one of those days for them, right? That they don't feel as loved, or maybe their person isn't here, or maybe they've lost their person either through, not just through death or that kind of loss, but even through like divorce or breakups. It's that's still a loss, and that can still be really challenging, and it can be really hard. So I think for me, what I have allowed myself to do is feel those things. I think I get so used to every day pushing things to the side and saying, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with it later. And sometimes I ignore my own emotions and ignore kind of what's happening in my life because it's just easier to kind of keep on with the motions, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, when those days hit me pretty tough, I allow myself to grieve. I allow myself to feel all the feelings. And whether that just means having like a good solid cry for, an hour or two, or, just feeling a little down, I allow myself a little bit of time. But then I recognize that you have to pick up those pieces, right? Like you have to, we talked about resilience earlier. You have to keep moving on and moving forward. And so, um, recognizing, I think, allowing ourselves to feel those things, but also recognizing that day is going to be difficult for us. So what can we do? Like what do we want to make sure that we're hanging out with our friends or our family or the people that we know are supportive?
Mm-hmm.
Would seeing them face to face and spending some time with them make a difference? If it does, like plan that time. Know it's coming up and plan your time kind of accordingly. Know that it's going to be a little bit difficult. Make sure you're reaching out for help if you need it. Like I know that can be really hard and challenging, and not all of us feel comfortable with doing that all of the time, but there is support out there. There is help. I know here in Chester County, we have warm lines where you can simply just call, not necessarily if you're in a crisis, but you can call just to talk to somebody. And so, just if you're feeling a little down, go ahead, give them a call. You can also text them. So that's a huge help. You can call or text 988 at any time. That's always a great number for everyone to have on hand if they need it. But I would just say, if you know that this day is coming up and you know it's going to be hard and difficult for you, figure out how you're going to plan accordingly, right? So hanging out with your friends, making sure that you're around people who love you and care about you may help you throughout the day. Give yourself time to feel some of those feelings and reach out for help if you need it too. And I think for those of us who know that other people in our lives might really struggle with this day in particular, just reaching out to them and just letting them know that they're loved and that they're cared for, I think would be a huge help for somebody who's really struggling throughout the day.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good advice. How can people get involved or learn learn more about the work being done in Chester County?
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more about the Chester County ACEs Coalition, you can always visit our website at www.ccacescoalition.com. We also are on Facebook. You can just simply like search for Chester County ACEs Coalition. That's ACES Coalition. And you can check us out on Facebook and on our website. We have a lot of really great resources on our website. We also have an opportunity for community advocates to get a little bit more involved in our coalition and our work. So if you're interested in kind of working together with other people to continue our mission in the county to increase that awareness and education around trauma, we invite you to complete an interest form online, which you can find on our website. And again, we have a bunch of resources on there, upcoming events. We have trainings coming up, free trainings. I should also mention that all of our trainings, everything that we do for different audiences throughout the county, whether that be professionals or community members, all of our trainings are free. So they are no cost.
Oh,
So if
wow.
anyone is interested, please check out our website. Our events tab will tell you everything that we have coming up, and we invite you to participate.
Amazing. And I'll
Yeah.
I'll put that link in the description too of this episode too, so people
Awesome.
can just click on it.
Thank you.
And my last question is if you could say something to someone listening to this that's struggling, what would you say?
I think I would just say to hold on. That I know it feels dark and super tough right now, and that like you may not get through it, but you will. And there is that light at the end of the tunnel. I wish that more folks who were thinking about suicide. I think about my dad in some of his last moments, and I just wish that he would have held on just a little bit longer, just so that we could have shown him and that he could experience that things do get better. And it's not over. It's not an ending, that there's help out there. There's people who love and support you, and you're not alone. So just hold on. It'll get better.
Hold on. It's perfect. Hold on till dawn.
Hold on till dawn. Love it.
My dad was actually in my dream last night. My mom was too. It was very weird. I was very aware that he had died, but it was like I was going into the past. I was seeing him and my mom like before I was even born, and I was like walking
Whoa.
by and I was like staring at him, but he could also see me. And I was like, yeah, that's my dad. I know that's my dad. And he was like looking at me. I don't think he said anything though. And my mom was there. I don't think I interacted with my mom though. So it was very interesting that I had that dream before this
Yeah.
podcast episode.
Yeah, and you always wonder, like, what does that mean? What's going
Right.
on? I I I always look for my dad in places, and I don't know, not everybody believes this, but I just feel like there's always these little signs, right? So I talked a little bit about music and how important that was to him and to me. And we had this one song. I danced with him at him and my mom's wedding to this song. I had a wedding and danced with him to that song. Like it's a song that's just our song.
Mm,
And on his 5th year anniversary of his death, I was having a tough day, but I chose to go to the gym in the morning. As I walked into the gym, I was a little late, and the song was on as I walked in.
wow.
Of like all songs, it just on all days, it was
Yeah.
like as soon as I walked in, it just hit me. And I had to run to the bathroom really quick because I just broke down in tears. And then as
Mhm.
I was walking out, another song came on that reminded me of him, and I had to
Oh,
go back
wow.
to the bathroom. But like that tends to happen a lot. Like I'll be in the car and I'll just be like, oh, I'll start thinking about him, and all of a sudden a song comes on that immediately reminds me of him. Or it's just like those little things throughout the day that I try to like, I don't know, recognize and kind of
Yeah.
take notice of because I think it's happening a lot, and so many times it just goes unnoticed,
Yes.
you know?
And the same thing happens to me too. Music especially. Like last year on his birthday, I was at my mom's house and my aunt had texted my mom and said, I just turned on the radio and the song that was on like when I was driving home the day I found out he died. Or no, it was the song that was on when she got in the car after his funeral was playing and she was like that felt like a message. And so I
Yeah.
said to my mom, I was like, turn on the radio right now. And a song was ending and the next song that played was the song that reminds me of my dad.
Shut up.
And I
See?
was like, that that's the universe. That is
Yes.
dad. Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think we have to look for those little things. We have to, and we have to pay attention because sometimes it could be like the smallest little tiny thing, and it's
Yes.
like, all right, all right, he's here. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
just makes it makes at least me, it makes me feel like he'll always be with me,
Yes. Yeah, it
you know.
helps. It
It
feels like you're
does.
not alone. Yeah.
Exactly.
They're always with us. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yay, this was so much fun.
Yay.
Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, and
Thank
I
you,
just got
Erin. I appreciate it. I followed you on Facebook, so let
Oh,
me
yay.
know.
The hold on till dawn one.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
Yay,
You do
thank
all
you.
this yourself? Like you like
I
edit
do.
it and everything?
Yeah. I do the recording, the editing, the uploading, the social media. Yeah. In
So
the midst
much.
of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do an episode every other week, and I did that for like a year and a half, but then I was like, this is too much. So now I do like once a month, which is a little bit easier. But I think I was so motivated at the beginning and I had so many like ideas and things to talk
Right.
about.
But you were
And
just like, I'll just do it all. Let me do it every other
yeah,
week. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Well, that sounds good. Thank you again. I appreciate it. It was fun. And keep me updated. Let me know when it
Yes,
comes out.
I will. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Our website is holdontildawn.com and our email is holdontildawn@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at holdontildawn and on Facebook at Hold On Till Dawn Benefit Concert. See you next time.